Hey friends, it's George Carroll. I'm here with my good friends at Opta, and they have a really important message for you.
Hey my friends, it's George Carroll. Welcome to this week's Motivational Minutes. And in this week's Motivational Minutes, we're talking about making a difference and also skill building. So as you just saw, I recently was booked and hired to speak at the Opta conference. So Opta stands for Oregon Pupil Transportation Association, and essentially the room was full of a bunch of school bus drivers. And I had the gift and the honor of developing and then delivering a message that said, hey, you can make a difference. You are making a difference. And I think that sometimes we devalue ourselves and we minimize ourselves and we forget to acknowledge that we are making a difference in the world. We're all an important cog in the wheel of life doing our part. And so by the end of my talk, I had them up and hooting and hollering and fired up and high-fiving and hugging each other and really just feeling good about the difference they are making in the world. And as over the years, as I've grown and expanded my business from a one-on-one coaching practice to an international company where I get to work with clients all around the world. I have these, corporate training clients. I have these speaking engagements. I have all these online programs. People ask me, George, what's the secret? Can you give me a few tips? And really, when you think about it, business is a skills building game. One of my favorite audiences to work with are change agents, people who work with people one-on-one, like coaches and counselors and therapists and practitioners and facilitators who do the one-on-one work with people and the group work with people to help them to create change, expansion, and transformation in their lives. And it's my favorite audience because I'm one. I am a change agent. And what I've recognized over the years is that there's so many of us who have these amazing skills, capacities, and abilities to help people create magical, massive change in their life, but they don't have the business skills to build around their gifts. And so that's part of one of my gifts is to be able to help change agents build a business around their gifts so they can monetize their passions and make income doing what they love. And what I tell people is that there are really 12 critical skill areas that if you're willing to develop a competency in, your business will expand. But the challenge is we get so sidetracked by all the different shiny objects that are out there that we don't hone in on these 12 critical skills. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a free webinar training on this on June 30th of 2015 at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time that you'll be receiving an invitation for. So keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, you can mark your calendars, and I'm going to be covering these 12 specific and critical skill areas that if you develop competency in, that you will experience business expansion, which means you're going to experience a growth and expansion in your leads, in your client and customer base, and also in your revenue streams. But we got to get clear on what to focus on because there's so many, as you probably recognize, there's so many dang things to focus on these days. It's easy to get overwhelmed and sidetracked. So I'm going to teach you what are the 12 critical skill areas you need to develop competency in. And then I tell people you've got to learn how to build skills quickly. So for example, my friend Tony Robbins always says that repetition is the mother of skill. I learned that really early on, about a decade ago, and I've been able to build skills very rapidly as a result of that. The more you do anything, the better you're going to get at it, period. And there are 4 levels of learning to any new skill that I'm going to teach you here right now. So when I first learned to drive, I remember I first learned to drive with a stick shift, and it was a 1992 blue Nissan minivan, and my dad was sitting there in the passenger seat. I was sitting there in the driver's seat. The engine was turned off, the key was in the ignition, and I was ready to go. I was already at the first level of learning, which is unconsciously unskilled. That's when you don't know, and you don't know you don't know. It's sort of that blissful ignorance, if you will. And the minute I adjusted the rear view, I turned the ignition on, I put the clutch, I put the gear into first gear, put the clutch in, and tried to move forward and push on the gas, let go of the clutch, something happened. And if you've ever learned to drive with a stick shift, you can probably relate. I know for me personally, I went about 5 feet and then sputtered out and my engine died. From that first attempt, I moved into the second level of learning, which is consciously unskilled. You're now aware that you suck at this specific skill. And this is where most people trip themselves up in learning new skills and getting competency in new skills. Because what happens is the minute most people recognize that they're not good at something, they quit. They judge themselves, they make themselves wrong, they call themselves bad or not good or whatever it is that the self-judgment is, and they quit. And they don't realize it's the repetition that helps develop the skill. So let's go back to driving. So the second time I turned the engine on, put the gear into first gear, let go of the clutch, press the gas, I went a little bit further. I went about a block and then the engine died. And then I put it into second gear and the engine died. And I went put it into third gear eventually and the engine died. And then I eventually could go around the block sputtering and sputtering, moving forward. And then the more I did, the more I repeated the process, the faster I learned, and I moved into the third level of learning, which is consciously skilled. You're now aware that you're improving and progressing in this specific area. And over the course of time, and you know the rest of the story, over the course of time, you just keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it, and eventually you move into the fourth level of learning, which is unconsciously skilled. You don't even have to think about it. It's like walking or talking, or for a lot of people, it's driving. People think that they can text or email while they drive. I highly don't recommend that. And the thing is we learn skills rapidly, but we have to remember it's the repetition, it's the spaced repetition that really develops the skill. And so in this webinar that I'm going to be talking about is these 12 specific critical skill areas. When you learn to develop these skills quickly and rapidly, your business can grow. And really that's what's helped me take my business from a small one-on-one coaching practice to an international company. And it's all about focusing on these 12 critical skill areas and developing competency in these skills. So there was a man, and he was a violinist. He had been a violinist all his life, and he finally got to the point where he was, operating and performing at those really high levels in those concerts. And he was doing a concert with a whole orchestra at Carnegie Hall in New York City. And so he was so excited for it, right? He got to New York City, he had his violin, he was ready to go, but he didn't know where Carnegie Hall was. So concert's about to start, and he's looking around trying to figure out where Carnegie Hall is. And so he sees a guy across the street with a violin, assumes that he's part of the concert, runs across the street, taps the guy on the shoulder, says, "Hey man, hey, how do I get to Carnegie Hall from here?" And the guy looks at him, he says, "Practice, man, practice."